Hello, everyone. This is Neeta and I'm the founder of Trends Literature Series. Hope you're watching all our interesting conversations with all most fascinating writers and thought leaders and authors that we keep on having on our platform from time to time. And today, as our 159th guest, we have today Tanya Aggarwal. She's an author, she's a research scholar, and she's got degree in various degrees in ancient Indian history from Jawaharlal University and Lady Shriram College. That's so fascinating. So welcome, Tanya, and many congratulations for this most fascinating explanation of the underlying message of the Mahabharata through your book, Unveiling the Mahabharata, as it was meant to be. So welcome once
Thank,
again.
thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, to start with, I would really like to ask you because, you have very relevant educational qualification in ancient Indian history. So, how do you think this has really impacted the authenticity of the retelling of the epic? How it has really helped you in writing this book?
Yeah, so basically, that engaging with the primary source, reading the Mahabharata in its original form. And of course, it is a massive book, right? It piles up into like a big pile,
Yes,
18 parvans, right? So, extracting information from that authentic source and at the same time making sure we don't mess with the details, don't fudge anything up, try to stick to what has been written, but of course put it across in a way that it is accessible to, everyone, because everyone wants to read the Mahabharata, everyone wants to read more about the stories. There are such fascinating stories within the Mahabharata. So I wanted to do that. I wanted to stick to the authentic text, not change anything, and also put it across in a way that it's easy to read, easy, straightforward, and, put it across in that way.
absolutely. Because, there have been multiple books on the subject on Mahabharata, and nobody can get tired of reading this story, this epic story. So, how do you think your retelling of Mahabharata has been different from so many others that we have, and so many renowned authors, and so many writers, so many people who have been writing, researching on the topic? So, how do you think it is different? Because I'm sure I've read the book, it's a total deep dive into the epic. Yeah.
Yeah. So, again, to explain that again, we have to go back to the original, Veda Vyasa's Mahabharata. So, when you look at that text, right, it's not chronological. Originally it is not. A lot of the retellings that have been done have simplified it. Put it in that chronology. Okay, this happened, then this happened, then this happened. But if you actually go back to the original text, it'll say something and then it'll go back and then it'll explain what happened, then again it'll go back, and then you're going all around time. So that is an element that really fascinated me, because I thought, that is a very different way of storytelling, and I
Mm.
didn't want to make it a simplistic beginning to end kind of story. I wanted to stick to what it is originally. So in that sense, what I have done in my book is that we always start at the end. As you would know, as you've read it,
Yes.
every chapter will begin at the battlefield in
Right.
Kurukshetra, right? And so we see what is the outcome first, what has happened first, and then we journey back, to understand why it happened, what is the connection of that character to that final moment of that character. So uh, that I feel is something that sets this apart. And linked to that is this whole concept of why something happened. There is one way of storytelling where you say, okay, this happened, and in Mahabharata we know, right, there's a lot of drama. People really focus on the drama, on the gossip, on, those kind of elements, which also of course is very interesting. But I wanted to do something different, because what I feel is that when you read the original Mahabharata, you realize that the underlying, what is the Mahabharata communicating? Of course, the Bhagavad Gita is separate. It is communicating a lot of knowledge. But if we actually see the Mahabharata through its stories, is also telling us something. It's giving us some knowledge. So that I felt, is karma. why something happened, why did this happen, what were the series of cause and effects that led to that moment, why it had to be like this. That is why the heading is as it was meant to be, right? That's the subheading of the book. As it was meant to be is that this is how it was supposed to happen. There were many, threads that, kind of wove together and brought us to that moment in Kurukshetra. So that aspect of karma, of, maybe even looking at it as fatalism, that fate, it was, is there free will, is there, only fate? That aspect, I think, is what I have focused on, and that is what the original Mahabharata is also focused on. That's where the authenticity comes in. This is not my idea. This
Hmm.
is how the original Mahabharata has focused on, and that's an aspect that I've brought into the book in a very strong way.
Absolutely. And it's been packaged so well that it makes it so interesting while you're going through the book. I find that there's a lot of character focus in the book, right? Each and every chapter talks about a character. And that is, I would say, a very, very unique aspect of your book. So, would you like to talk about that? And also, perhaps, maybe few lines on your favorite character? I know it's very difficult to choose out of so many. I still keep on forgetting names sometimes, but when you go back to the narrative and the perspective, yes, you recollect. So it must have been as difficult for you too. So
Yeah,
would you
yeah.
like to talk? Because this is actually what binds the book together, I would say. It's what you've really done to the book, talked about various characters, talked about how it all began. Yes, your perspective.
So that's what I wanted to do. Like again, in a way, this is not a collection of stories, right?
Mhm.
Because although every chapter focuses on a character, at the end of it, you have sort of gone through the whole Mahabharata. That was the intention. You have a prologue, you have an epilogue, and you sort of, the entire story of Mahabharata is sort of covered through this entire book. But I did want to focus on the stories of some of the lesser known characters. Like, the story of Amba Shikhandin is
Yeah.
something that is very interesting. And people, like a lot of people who have read the book, have come back to me and said that, we didn't really know, we had heard tidbits, but we didn't really know what led to it. And, the character is very intriguing. So that aspect, and the aspect of even Vidura. See, Vidura
Oh
is
my
not one
God.
of the warriors.
You
He's not.
really handled it very well, I would say, about Vidura.
So
Yes.
yeah, that's a Vidura's character is very interesting. He's in the sidelines. He
Yes.
really wants to intervene. He really wants to do things. But at the end of the day, like, he's just a spectator and he has to just watch it all unfold.
And maybe
And
warn them, but he can't do
warn
it.
them, but beyond that, there is, and the reason for that also, why was that the case? That aspect
Mhm.
was also very,
You've
very
spoken
interesting.
about it.
So yeah, so that's why, and even Bhishma Pitama, of course, everyone knows the character, but the backstories, where, so I found, honestly, the whole aspect of Bhishma's story and the link with Ganga and the link with the Vasus, that was something that was very fascinating. And the
Mm.
way we go in the book is also like Bhishma is the previous generation, then we come to Vidura, and even Amba is part of his generation and then becomes part of Vidura's generation. So in that sense, we are going in that flow of, how the Mahabharata is unfolding. As far as favorite character is concerned, I am very biased to Krishna. So I
Okay.
think that is a very generic answer, but that is, I mean, somehow, Krishna's role in all of it, and the juice that Krishna brings into the Mahabharata is something, I mean,
Unbeatable.
down, yeah, yeah,
How he answers and explains to Arjuna is everybody.
yeah, of course, of course.
Mahabharata as such has an epic amount of followers, and you go ahead and you actually simplified the story. Your aim to talk about an often told story and with multiple characters is what really makes this book unique. But for you as an author, what really inspired you and how did you really think about? I think this is your first book, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
So,
yes.
how did you really begin with the Mahabharata? You could have
So
perhaps taken up any story and just gone ahead. Maybe you could have just taken one of the characters and gone ahead. Maybe about Krishna you would have written. But how do you begin your story with unveiling the Mahabharata?
So the thing is that actually, very honestly, my research into the Mahabharata started out as a purely academic research. I had no intention of writing a book. There was no such plan whatsoever.
Mm.
I was doing academic research about karma and fate in the Mahabharata. So it was that's also with my background in research. That is why everything I have looked at from a very academic perspective, where there was footnoting and making that bibliography and everything. Those elements you will even see in the book, although it is a book meant for general for
Mm.
everyone, but those research elements are there because it was started. My entire research into the Mahabharata was purely as was an academic pursuit as such.
Mm.
But then, I had all this research that I had done, and I was like, this is, and especially when I realized that, this aspect of karma is something people are not very aware of, that Mahabharata really, indirectly, Mahabharata is not a text that will, except for Gita, of course,
Mm.
Mahabharata and of course Shanti Parvan, all those are very, parts of the Mahabharata where you have discourses, you have knowledge. But if you see the entire book as a whole, if you see the entire text as a whole, I'm like, this is a message that the Mahabharata is giving to everyone, but people are not aware that this message is coming out from here. So, when I realized that, I thought, okay, let me write this, as a novel, as a historical fiction, so that was where that sort of came up. So, the initial research into the Mahabharata had nothing to do with writing a novel. That was something that it evolved into somehow.
And why the name Unveiling the Mahabharata? I know you've mentioned about karmic retribution and everything because the tagline is as it was meant to be. And you also say in the book, I think it was in the epilogue that you mentioned that everything happened exactly as it was meant to be in the book. It could not have been the other way.
Mhm.
And
Correct.
this has been also a topic for your research. So, would you like to actually extensively talk about this? Because this is how you related various parts into this, and this is how the whole book unveils, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
I
So
wanted a separate answer and a separate question on that. That's why I was waiting to ask you this because it is so much related to how you handled the entire story.
yeah. So unveiling is basically, like, that's the point. Like, everyone knows Mahabharata, like, if you ask anyone, some story, some aspect, they would have watched the TV show, they may have read some stories, they
Hmm.
may have even heard some stories from their grandparents. Mahabharata is part of our ethos, right? In India, it's
Hmm.
part of our tradition. So the whole concept of unveiling is, that let's remove the veil, let's remove the outer, just the story, let's dive deep, let's dig deeper and understand, okay, I know this story, but what is this story telling me? I know,
Hmm.
uh, you know so that's the concept of unveiling, that you sort of remove the curtain, just go to the core, try to understand what is this book telling me really, what, and how can I apply it to my life, I think that aspect is very important. Okay, you may hear stories, it may be interesting. Okay, those things are there, but at the end of it, how is this relevant in my life today? It happened so much, so long ago in the past. It's history, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it is history. It is of a different time, but how can I apply it to my life? And that is where the as it was meant to be comes. In our life also, so many things happen, like so many unexpected things happen. They may be really good, they may be really bad, but we may be working towards something and it becomes something else. you know so that aspect of, maybe this is as it was meant to be, that aspect gives a little relief. Otherwise we keep fighting it, right, in life, that why did this happen, why did this happen to me, I wanted something else, maybe things could have happened differently. We have that regret, we have that, hope that, oh, something else should have happened. But when we come to, this understanding that, okay, no matter what, so many attempts were made to even stop the war from happening, in the end it had to happen. All the pieces, kind of the pieces of the puzzle, came together at the end, and that was how it happened. So I feel, knowing this, it gives some relief in everyone's life, that, okay, this is, a sense of acceptance also comes, that, okay, again, this does not mean that you just sit back and do nothing. Ki acha jo hona hai, everything has to happen, it will happen. No, you have to act, you have to do your job, you have to do your duty. It's not that you just become fatalistic and just sit back and say, oh, everything will happen, I don't have to do anything. That's not what it is. We have to act, but at the end of the day, we don't get stuck in the past. If we feel that, okay, this is as it was meant to be, let's move on now. That sort of, so in every chapter also, if you would have noticed, I have woven in this sentence, as it was
Yes.
meant to be. So that is something, it comes out in everyone's story. It's not just one story that's telling us this repeatedly. This aspect of this is as it was meant to be is coming up. So that's why I felt like this is and it's also a sort of intriguing title, that
Yes, it catches your eye
it
immediately.
catches you, because you're like, and the whole, are you really in control of everything that's happening in your life? Is there something more at play? Is something else going on? That aspect also is very intriguing, and that is the message of the Mahabharata, I feel. If we peel the layer, it is the message. So that's what I wanted to focus on, and that's the intent with which I wrote the book.
This book is the result of multiple years of your research, and that's how this book's been put together. From your perspective, you know so much about this. I know I'm going to talk absolutely opposite to what we just talked. But do you think, uh, let's forget the karma side. Let's forget as it was meant to be. Do you think the war could have been stopped?
Mm. It seems from the book, it seems unlikely because efforts were made. Let's remember there is an
Mhm.
entire text, the book Udyog Parvan is just completely on peace efforts. Like Sanjay goes there, Krishna goes here. In fact, Krishna went multiple times, And
Hmm.
the point was this, right? That at the end of it, it was just that Dhritarashtra's love for his sons, which just, I
My
can say
God.
blinded him in a way, because as I said, right, even it said that the Pandavas would have been happy with 5 villages,
Yes.
so,
And they were not willing to do that.
and they were not even willing to do that. It has to come both ways. So, although many efforts were made, and again, right, that's what. So, when we understand what is happening at a different level, it's
Mm.
not just these two sets of cousins who are fighting, right? This is a
Mm.
part of a larger cosmic battle. When we understand, that, right in the beginning, we talk about how, this is one of the many Deva Asura battles that have happened and that are just happening. It's something that's happening at a different realm. It's
Mm.
not something that is happening here. So when you understand it from that context, that is why that aspect comes in, that the people who are actually a part of this war, who are fighting in this war, they themselves were not really aware of what is happening at a broader level. That was the concept. So I feel like understand, and this is all from the Mahabharata, that whole concept of, Bhumi Devi going to Brahma saying the weight of the asuras is too much, and I need to be relieved of this burden. All the gods and all of them planning, okay, let's descend to earth, let's be born, and them asking Vishnu to come, the avatar. So when you understand all of this, then you understand that, yeah, there is something more at play. It's not just two cousins, sets of cousins are fighting, and that fight could have been avoided. And another very interesting thing is that if we wouldn't have had the Mahabharata, we would not have had the Gita. That is also
Yes.
there, right?
Yes.
It was in that battlefield, in that realization of, oh my God, what is happening? We
Yes.
got the Gita. Otherwise, the Gita is so important, right? In today's world, in all times, it's been so important. So I mean, I stick to the as it was meant to be angle of it.
And during your research, so how much time did you take to write this book in any case? I mean,
Um,
how much?
so
Because
um, yeah, the research I think took about 2 years, which was then again separate from the book because the book writing, but I had all the data, I had all the information. After that, it took about a year. And
okay.
mind you, this year was when I was expecting my daughter. So that whole year, I was just relaxing at home. I was not working. I was just sitting and I was writing this book. And, somehow it kind of matched with that. And then when she was born, it was like almost done, and then a couple of months later, it was complete. So, uh,
Lovely.
about a year to write, and then of course after that there's like a long process of actually getting it published. I mean, you would be aware, you've been
Yes.
interacting with authors, but so because now she's almost 5, so
Thank God.
that's the timeline.
So at least 4 years of struggle of getting it published and
Yeah.
getting the right person to publish it. That's always very important. During your research and during your writing this book, there was any one aspect of Mahabharata which really left you speechless. I mean, you felt that, and at some point, it also changed your viewpoint on the epic. Maybe any hidden story or something which really didn't make to the book, something that really made you question few things in the book. I know it's a difficult question to kind of come back and go
Uh,
back so many years.
Yeah. No, I feel one thing, of course, something that really touches everyone is Abhimanyu's death,
Oh,
right?
yes.
Abhimanyu in the Chakravyuha, right? Everyone is, that is something, the way he was killed, everything. And, so that was something, of course, we are aware how it happened, that Yudhishthir asked him to enter and said, okay, we are right behind you. And it just
Mm,
closed up behind him, and he was all alone. And so many, there is a dharmic code of warfare which has to be followed, right? That it has to be one opponent against another. It cannot be multiple against one. That is a dharmic way of fighting, to make sure that it's a fair battle.
mm,
With Abhimanyu, that didn't happen, right? Towards the end, they felt like, okay, if we don't, choose the adharmic path, Abhimanyu will kind of defeat us all. He was very, very skilled as a warrior. And then, of course, he was overpowered by many. And, everyone has seen, right, that whole imagery of him carrying
mm,
the wheel. And so, of course, Abhimanyu's death has always been, in the memory of all, has been a tragic and a very unfair death. So when I was reading the Mahabharata, this is a story that I was, not very, even I was not aware of, and I don't know if many people are, where, uh, the whole concept of him being the son of Soma, and,
mm,
him being, the Soma saying, I cannot part with my son for so long, so he will come back to me sooner than the war ends. So
mm,
again, the whole concept of, okay, when we see it at the gross level, this character of Abhimanyu was, so horribly killed. But at the end, that was also pre-decided. It was pre-planned. It was something that was, not just random. I think that is something that really comes out in all the stories. Nothing is random. Everything is, in a way
that's
pre-planned. So
amazing.
that there's a reason, yeah. So he said that, okay, I will part with my son, let him go, let him, be a part of this, this battle, but he will come back because I cannot stay away from him. It was the love of Soma for his son that Abhimanyu had to, come back so soon. So that aspect again is very, very interesting. And then also one more thing that was very interesting was Ganga, we know, right? Ganga, she
Mm,
drowned her children as soon as they were born. And,
mm,
that is so horrible. It's like, when you
mm,
hear it, it's like crazy. Like, like 7 sons, as soon as they were born, she would drown them in the water, which was like, it's completely horrifying.
mm,
But it was because the Vasus had been cursed to be born on earth. And they told her that, please rid us of, it's such an interesting take that being born on earth is like a punishment.
mm,
And to rid, they said, like, rid us of our punishment immediately. They requested her to do this. So again, that link, I think that is what has fascinated me the most, that link between what is happening here, what is happening, in the gross level, and what has been decided in the subtle level. So again, that thing comes, okay, everything is just happening, it's not, we may not know what is the reason for anything. So,
mm.
why to fight against it? Why to? So that is a recurrent theme. And these two were very, things that stood out in my mind when I thought, okay, why is it that, you know, why is this happening? These are horrifying things, the children being drowned and Abhimanyu, the way he was killed, but there is a reason. So that reason is what fascinated me.
In both these incidents, definitely, and so many others. And also the fact, and in your book, you talk about it quite at length, is about Dronacharya fighting for Kauravas. And
Hmm.
then he's subsequently getting killed because there was a misinformation that his son has been killed. So all that, I mean, imagine the guru, he was
Hmm.
the most esteemed guru and he's fighting. And then the Pandavas on the other side are scheming in a way. to
Yeah,
kill. So,
of course.
so many, I think, war codes broken.
Yeah, oh,
Kshatriya.
100.
So,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
did you think about that? I mean, so many things were happening, as you just mentioned, which ethically, morally were also not right.
Yeah, that is true. And that's what. So, I mean, again, the time was such, that, it was just a matter of, that we have to win. When you have to win, then things go a little awry. But, and again, even when Karna, at the end, right, when Karna was going to be killed, then he raised this question that, how are you, doing something adharmic? I'm fixing my wheel, I'm taking my wheel out
Mhm.
from the ground. You're not supposed to do this. But then that's what then Krishna says, right? That right now you cannot remember dharma. If
Mhm.
you had lived a dharmic life throughout, then you can remember dharma. But you have done so many things in your life that have been this thing. So you cannot, it's a matter of convenience that when you need it, you remember what is dharmic warfare. But when it is you on the other side, when it is you fighting against Abhimanyu, you justify it in your own ways. So that's the thing. I mean, I think, and that's one thing I really like about the Mahabharata. All the characters are gray. There is no
Yes.
black, there is no white. There is, every character has, and that is how it human nature is, right? It's very realistic. You cannot have people who are just extremely good or extremely evil. Everyone has their shades. Of course, there will be some darker grays and some lighter grays. That is obviously there. But at the end of it, I think that makes it more real, more relatable.
More
It
humane, I
more
would say.
humane, yeah, yeah, and more, yeah, you can connect with it because it's not, everyone has their own situations, everyone has their own circumstances, everyone has their own way of responding to those circumstances. So that is true. I mean, that is there.
Another question related to this is definitely that the book also highlights a lot of moral dilemma,
Hmm.
throughout faced by, like you call it ethics or call it whatever, but it's ultimately at the end of the day, moral dilemma faced by different characters at different point of time. For example, Arjuna asks Krishna that what possessed us to wage a war against our own people, and that
Hmm.
is how Gita came up, and so many other instances of self-remorse, questioning. So, how do you think these dilemmas? We say that Mahabharata is very much the epic of our times.
Hmm.
It reflects how we are. You just mentioned that people are gray, some mildly, some strongly. But how do you think these dilemmas really mirror the struggles that we face today in our society? It reflects that, right? This is how it has been.
Of course. I suppose I think at the end of the day, it is just the emotions that drive people, right? Whether it is the emotions that drove, characters like Dhritarashtra, those many years ago, or whether it is even today. I think that is the connect, right? You have that same set of emotions which drives everyone, be it Duryodhana's greed, be it Dhritarashtra's, completely blinded love and attachment, from
Absolutely.
day one, he was told, forsake this son. He is going to cause your ruin. But he said, no, I'm not going to do it. And at every point of time, he was manipulated by Duryodhana to, to do what Duryodhana wanted. And, and again, again, that moral dilemma, right? These are the sons of my brother, my deceased
Mm.
brother, in fact, so
Mm.
that aspect is there even today, right? These emotions, these the overpowering emotions which lead people to take decisions which are not good. I think that is something that it's universal. It's not restricted to that time in the past. It's not restricted even to our space today. It's across the planet. These dilemmas are there. These overpowering emotions that play a very major role in, people deciding to do things that may not be for the best. That aspect, I think, kind of brings it together.
So, I mean, do you have anything to say about the timeline? I mean, there have been so many debates. It relates to what we're discussing just now. I mean, what was the timeline of Mahabharata you feel? Because there have been so many researchers on that. So there's so many, I think, who better person than ask you since you've been a research scholar in this. So that time and now, things have hardly changed. I mean, it remains relevant today also, globally, in India, everywhere, and it's quite philosophical in nature.
Mhm.
But what was the timeline you think? When did it really take place, Mahabharata?
So there is, that's what when I teach history also, right? So I always tell my students, there is this aspect of, the composition of the text and actually the compilation of the text,
Mm.
so that aspect is there. The Mahabharata as we have it today has layers to it. That is something that is well acknowledged. So although the timeline goes really really far back, it's not the timeline that we read in our books, where we say that the Mahabharata was written from 1500 BC to 1500 C. That is the timeline that is given. But the original story, what we are told is it was called Jaya. The original name of the Mahabharata text as it was written was Jaya. And then a lot was added to it, be it the local traditions, local stories. So it's very interesting, like the Mahabharata has, of course, spread across the country and abroad also. And it's very interesting that when those stories spread to those places, some people added to it. They added their own thing. They
Mm.
added a relevance of their own, space into the Mahabharata. So the Mahabharata, in that sense, is a little chaotic. The text. What they say is 25,000 verses was the original story. That is the what we have from the beginning. And then when we come to now, it has 1 lakh, over 1 lakh verses.
Right, right.
So that assigning a particular date to the text is a little difficult. I mean, I don't think we can very with a lot of surety say that. But of course, the original story is there, and that is, of course, something that is very old. And what was added to it, now that becomes very tricky. What has been added later, what was original,
Mm.
that aspect, of course, is something.
Remain a
And
mystery.
with surety, I also, despite being a researcher, I cannot say for sure, because no one can say for sure. We're not sure when what was added, what was the context of its adding. All that is sort of this thing. But of course, I mean, I don't agree with the fact that people call it mythology, because mythology means myth, and myth
Mm.
means it did not happen. I definitely do not subscribe to that. We do have historical proof. In fact, now there is a lot of research being done in in the field of archaeology, which is linked to astronomy, where we are being able to,
Mm.
through the constellations and all mentioned in the Mahabharata text, we are being able to identify exact dates. So, calling it, just a fanciful story which someone came up with, that is something I definitely don't subscribe to. So, I will not call it myth or mythology. But the date is something that is a bit tricky to really pinpoint. Uh, so,
Absolutely. So, any last words on the book, the cover, the publishers, anything that you would like really the readers to know? I'm sure everyone will be tempted to read your book, and they're already reading. A lot of good reviews on the book already on the net that I see. So,
mm.
anything which you would like to really, really from your heart talk about this, something that we've missed out, something that we've not covered, anything. The floor is
No,
yours.
I mean, the book, it's a labor of many years.
Yes.
And I also feel, that this is a book that sort of, it brings the Mahabharata to a point where you start thinking about your own life. You
Hmm.
start thinking about your own life decisions. You start thinking about your own life choices. So I feel like, by reading this book, you sort of get into, some sort of, what we say, manan, some sort of, introspection, which I feel is something that, and this is something I realized after the book was published. I didn't realize this is something that would come up, but I mean, a lot of people who have read the book have been telling me this, that, yeah, when even my editor in Garud, like, she actually, she was really, I mean, really a blessing. Like, we had a really good time with the whole editing process. And she was the first person who actually,
Yes.
apart from proofreading and all, like, she was the first person who read the book, right? Like, before it was sort of out there. And she kind of told me that, this book is making me think about my life. And I was like, that's amazing. It's not that I planned it in that way. It's not that's what, I approached it with. But that, and then again, like, now that it's out there and people have read it, and a lot of people are coming back to me and saying that, yeah, we are connecting it. We are connecting the Mahabharata for the first time in our lives. Because of course, the stories, but there is that disconnect that, okay, this is something that happened in the past. and it has no link with me, but of course it is a very nice story, and it's a very nice thing to either watch on the TV or read or whatever. But that connect with your life,
Connecting
how
the dots.
message, yeah, and how is the message of the Mahabharata relevant to me? That is
Mm.
something I feel, which, I mean, again, I realized after the book was out. I didn't see it in that way, but repeatedly people have been coming to me and saying this. So that was something very, I was very happy about, because
Thank you.
it's something I unintentionally accomplished, that I've unintentionally accomplished through this. I mean, it was not the plan, but yeah. And again, as I said, like, the cover, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the way we planned this is because again, every chapter begins here. It begins in Kurukshetra.
Mm.
Kurukshetra is where they had to end up. Everything that happened led them there. So I was very keen that, this, it's sort of like a domino effect, right? Like the domino has been pushed, and then it
Yes.
just, it will fall, it will go,
Mm.
it will reach, and that final domino is the war. It is, that is the culminating point where everything, all the different things are leading there. So here, that's what I've mentioned it in the book also, right? That if we look at Dronacharya's story, right?
Yes.
Dronacharya was the teacher to all of them, right? The Pandavas and Kauravas, right? But at the end of it, he had to be killed by Drishtadhyumna, by the son of Drupad. So how things happened the way they did, that
Very surprising.
yeah, he ended up on the opposite side of the Pandavas. And the Pandavas are married to Draupadi, who is
Mm.
the daughter of
Sister.
Drupad. That enmity of Dronacharya and Drupad is what, it's well known, and it's something that, and that aspect, so that's what, that connecting of the dots. How did it happen? Because they could have easily been on the same side, right? Dronacharya standing next to Drishta and fighting, but no. The
Mm.
Drishta was born with the intent. He was created. He came out of the fire with the intention of killing Drona. So how are things going to piece together that they are both on different sides of the battlefield? This is also, it's very, if you go into it, it's very interesting. How is this happening? How is it all coming together in this very perfect way? I mean, again, I'm not saying war is perfect, but the pieces, of the puzzle, they just, by the end of it, they are perfect. They are perfectly aligned. And then that tells you that what is in your hands, like,
Mm.
so
Yeah, as it
that's
was meant to be. So
as it was meant to be.
fantastically written book. And it is so simple and it is so engaging that I'm definitely going to give a copy each to my both daughters. And I'm going to make sure that they read this book. And thank you so much for being on our platform. It's been so lovely and refreshing and nice to talk to you today. Lovely. You made
Thank
my
you
day.
so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Really, really grateful. Thanks.
Thank you everyone for joining in. It's been a wonderful, wonderful interaction today, our 159. Do subscribe to our channel so that you can really come across such wonderful conversations now and then, and you can get the notifications. Thank you. Thank you, Tanya.
Okay,
Lovely
thank you.
talking to you today.
Yeah,
Lovely,
yeah.
absolutely.